All right, this is Derek with UT Gardens. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about gardening, vegetable gardening. I know a lot of people are out there trying to start a victory garden this year. First of all, I don't want anybody to get discouraged. And so I do want to talk about some options you have. One option you have is the traditional in-ground bed, and that's what most people think about when they think about gardening. And so you think about getting a plow, get out there, plow up the fields, make those good straight rows, and start putting your plants in the ground. And so one thing about in-ground gardening is you need to understand is to really do that well and see a lot of great success, you need some time to build soil. And so the best time to cultivate and till up and get ready for gardening in the spring is to do that in the fall. We don't have that time. But what you can do is you can cultivate with a shovel, or if you do have a tiller, go ahead and till the soil up and loosen it if you want to do an in-ground bed. Challenges with that is one, the time and energy it takes to do that. And as you can see, we've done it here, and I've done it with just a shovel hand cultivation. Loosen enough soil, and I've also added some peat moss or potting media to that, because most of us in East Tennessee see this kind of soil here, which is a very heavy clay soil. And it gets really hard as bricks when it dries up. When it's wet, it becomes really sticky, and so that becomes a challenge. It's not good soil for growing in, really, unless you add some soil amendments and some fertilizers to that, and organic material. So for us, if we're going to start an in-ground bed and we're looking at our yard and grass area, we're like, okay, I can take part of my yard, turn it into bed. We have to know, one, the quality of soil is going to be there. It's probably not going to be very high because you haven't put a lot of effort into building that soil up. So it will take a while to do that, but that is possible. Other options are containers. And so I've got several containers here we're going to talk about today. These are just 5-gallon buckets, and I've used these before in the past. You can grow some different things in them. You got to be careful what you put in here. So tomatoes, great. 1 tomato per bucket is going to be more than enough. You can put cucumbers. I put 2 in here. It might be a little too much. I might have to take one out eventually as we go. Also, these are liners or other pots that you can get when buying trees or shrubs. You can reuse them. It's always important to wash them out with a soap water solution to ensure you're getting bacteria out of them if you do want to reuse those. And this is just another outdoor container I had. So I've got tomatoes, I've got cucumbers. Benefits of using buckets is you can move them around. And so right now it is April 14th, so it's really early in the season. We're about ready to hit our average last frost date, which is for Knoxville is about April 16th, 17th. And again, that is an average, so that means that it could frost after that or could not frost well before that. But that's a good time to think about when to start planting outside. We need to worry about frost, even cold temperatures under 40 degrees. Some of these warm season vegetables like tomatoes aren't going to be very happy. So in a container like this, I can carry them inside and outside of my garage to keep them protected overnight until it warms up. Other challenges with these kind of containers are they get heavy. So as we have a tomato plant, as it gets big like it does by the end of the season and has full of tomatoes, it might fall over. So you do want to make sure you set it somewhere so it doesn't tip over. Cucumbers, they need to be strung up. They will. You'll need to have strings and tie them up somewhere so they can grow. Some other things we can put in containers to work really well are peppers. So I'm going to probably put some peppers in another container this size. And we can do potatoes. And so I'm going to show you how to plant some potatoes. So you can get buckets. You can reuse buckets if you've had them in the past. One thing you do need to watch is as they age and as you use them a couple years, they will break and become brittle. And then you want to throw those away because you don't want the microplastics in your soils. So to do a potato, we're going to take a bucket and we're going to drill holes in it to allow for drainage. All right, next, I'm going to knock all those shavings out. I'm going to start putting some soil in there. And this is just a potting media. This is a Lambert's product. It has mostly peat moss and perlite. So for potatoes, you want to fill up about 1 inch on the bottom, 1 inch or 2, and then you want to get your seed potatoes. All right, so right here I've got some purple tomatoes. And what I'm going to do is you can see potatoes. Purple potatoes. And you can see each little eye of a potato starts making shoots. And simply I'm going to cut those off into little pieces and then I'll plant them in the soil. And eventually it'll start growing roots and a plant will come out of that. So I'm going to stick it down here at the bottom of the bucket. And I'm going to see, I can probably get 2 or 3 more out of here. you want to try to get seed potatoes because they're typically treated with some kind of fungicide, and that'll help reduce the chance of having lose your potatoes to bacterial diseases. So I'm going to put a bunch in here, and what I'm going to do is fill this bucket up with soil, and as I grow throughout the season, we'll add more soil. So I'm going to stick these here. I'm going to get one more. And that one's gross, so I'm not going to use that one. I don't want to spread disease, so that's good. So I've got those in there. Now these are purple ones. This is Yukon Gold. I'm going to go ahead and stick it in there too. So I'm going to just cut it up, several eye pieces. And each one of these will start a plant, and eventually we'll start producing potatoes out of it. Now the trick about growing potatoes in a bucket are, as this bucket grows, or as the potatoes grow, you'll start seeing the shoots of the leaves. So I'm going to cover up the potatoes right now. They'll start rooting. And you typically want to have your soil wet, so they'll start rooting. And as the plant grows about an inch or two out of the soil, add a little bit, another layer of soil to that, the potato plant, to cover it up again. It'll keep growing, and eventually by the end of the summer you'll have potatoes growing out of the bucket. The stems and the flowers. Once it goes to flower, you can harvest them. You dump them out of the bucket, dump the bucket on the ground, and then you have full-grown potatoes in there to eat. Alright, so we planted some potatoes in the buckets. Now I'm going to show you how to use one of these containers to plant peppers. So I'm going to start with just potting media. Now this potting media is sterile and also doesn't have a lot of nutrients, so you will need to fertilize these things in containers as you go. And I've got some compost here. One thing about compost, and I'll kind of show you, is the idea of compost is to get it hot enough to kill the seeds. However, even you get that hot, we get a lot of these, and these are tomato seedlings. So if you start seeing those, you can just pull them out of your pots, or you can dig them up and plant them somewhere else. So I'm going to mix usually 3 parts potting media with 1 part compost. And I'm going to put a pepper in this one. So I'm going to fill this up again some more. I want to fill it nearly full. And sometimes when you get compost, if you do it at the house, you'll have, this was a compostable fork, and you see it hasn't composted yet. You'll find sticks and things in there, and you'll want to just get the sticks thrown back in your compost pile. They'll keep breaking down over time. So I'm going to mix this up, and then I'm going to add some water because I don't want to plant into dry soil. Alright, so we've got our soil in there, and we got our pepper plant. This is just a green bell pepper that I've grown from seed. You can take a look, you see some roots in there, so that's good. So I'm going to put 1 bell pepper per container this size. So I'm going to dig my hole, bury it to the level of that root ball. If there are more roots in that and kind of overpacked, I'd go ahead and separate those out. Same process for a 5-gallon bucket. Fill it up, mix it with compost, add your tomatoes in there. One thing I'd like to do when I plant or transplant my vegetables is I'd like to go ahead and add some fertilizer, because we're putting these plants under a lot of stress by removing them from their nice growing container. So we'll fertilize those when we're done using just a standard fertilizer. So again, we're talking about in-ground versus raised bed or container. So this is an in-ground bed that I kind of dug up about a month ago. Put cool season vegetables in, and before that happened, when I started that, there were no leaves out on these trees, and so you can see these trees have leafed out. It's been a while since I've done a vegetable garden. This area of the garden doesn't get enough sun in the summertime, so it's not going to work very well. I'm going to have to go somewhere else where we get more sun. The reason I chose this location was, one, we're right next to my rain barrel, and we're also right next to our water spigot. Again, selection of, you need full sun, which is about 6 hours of sunlight a day, and access to water. If you have a long hose, you can water it. Obviously in East Tennessee, particularly as the summer goes on, you're going to have to water more usually when we have a really dry spell, or else your plants are going to not survive. All right, so obviously this area of the yard has much more sunlight, and however, we haven't used it for gardening in a while, so there's not good soil. Again, I would want to really start preparing the soil in the fall. I don't have the time to do that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a little hand cultivation. You can see how difficult that can be. And I'm going to make several rows here, probably about 3 feet wide, and then I'll use some landscape fabric to put in between the rows once we're ready. So again, this is going to be very time consuming and take a lot of energy. It can also get very frustrating, so this is why I don't always recommend it. But you can see it's not something that's easy to do. You're also going to likely have a lot of weeds this season in the garden, mostly because you didn't kill things off. If you spray glyphosate or other herbicides, you're going to have to wait before you plant. And so there's going to be trade-offs to everything. You could try to take a sheet of plastic, put over it and solarize it, killing all the grass, which again will take time. So this time of year, it is too late to plant seeds if you're going to do summer vegetables. You want to go to the store, you want to go to a local garden center, and pick up your vegetables that are usually in 6-packs or cell packs, usually 6 plants per pack, or some smaller, a little bit larger pots. That way you can put them directly in the ground. And so again, starting after the April 17th, it's going to be warm enough that you're probably going to be okay. Just check the weather for the next week out to see how cold it's going to get. So I'm going to keep digging this one spot here. And this will take me a while if I'm going to do 3 rows like this. However, if I want to have a vegetable garden this year, this is what I'm going to have to do. So I'm typically going to just turn this over. I'm going to get some more potting media mixed in there. And you can see this soil is still very heavy clay. And so I've got all this grass here and turf here to deal with. You got to turn it, flip it upside down, and then what I tend to do is chop it up with a shovel. You don't want to do a lot of digging when the soil's wet. What will happen is you'll cause extra compaction of the soil, which will make it hard for air to be in there, and it's not as good for growing. So you want to wait till the soil dries out as much as possible before you start cultivating it. Alright, so another type of container planting you do is rail planters. And so on our porch at my house, we have these that are 1x6 over here. So these are a fabric rail planter made out of recycled materials. As you can see, these are small pockets, so we're not going to be able to put a lot of plants in here. You could definitely not put a tomato. I do have one rosemary plant that is already oversized. Mint, I've got some lemon balm I'm going to try in here, thyme on the other side, and basil. You know, one basil plant probably could do okay in there throughout most of the season. When we do any container, whether it's a rail planter, a bucket, a pot, is we need to understand that will dry out much quicker than the ground, our traditional in-ground beds. So you want to make sure that you check them regularly and you water them regularly. In a hot summer, as the plants are bigger, you might need to water them several times a day. You'll come out and you'll see them wilted, add a little bit of water. So that's another downside of using containers is, you have to add a lot of water, keep the plants from drying out. The other main downside is you need to purchase a lot of soil to do that. Upsides are, again, you can move a lot of containers around. You can move them in and out of your house as you're growing throughout the season when it's cool out in the early season. Also, it's easier to place instead of having to dig holes or dig into the soil and cultivate soil. And we're going to show you how to do that in just a second. The good thing is doing this is you're going to get some exercise, and that little exercise never hurts anybody. So one of the things we want to do is you can put some things in between the rows. You don't want grass necessarily. You'll have to mow it, weed it. You'll get weeds in your garden. The fact is, if you do an in-ground garden this year and you haven't prepped your soil, you're going to probably have a lot of weeds to contend with all year. You're just going to have to get ready for that. Pull those weeds, because weeds will compete for nutrients in the plants that you want, and obviously we're doing a vegetable garden, we want a lot of plants. So this is just a weed cloth. You can use cardboard, you can use newspapers to lay down. Now you can put this out, and there's a couple things you can do. One, you can use little stakes. You can buy these little metal stakes to hammer in the ground. This will blow away if you don't do anything. The other thing you can do as you're turning your beds, kind of bury the inch or two of that in there, so as you turn it over, you're going to allow that to keep from blowing away in heavy winds. in there. So here we go. I've got this. I'm estimating there's my edge. I want to probably go over a little further. A little bit more. And I'm going to take one of these stakes and just stick it in here. This will keep it from blowing up. Like that. I'll roll this out as far as I want to make, as long as I want to make my bed. This will also allow me to make some straighter lines as I'm laying out my garden bed. Okay, so that's about it. So I'll put a stake here. So that's it. Good luck gardening. Watch UT Gardens Facebook and other social media sites for more information about gardening, and check out UT Extension's website for more information about plants and growing vegetables this year.